Hi, it's Todd of Todd's Workshop here, and today we're going to talk about a Pictish crossbow. Now, we're going to start at the beginning, which is there is very little evidence really that the Picts had crossbows. There are a few carvings which look like they're crossbows. They kind of might be, they kind of might not be. It's been one of those sort of debates that's been raging in recent years, and it seems to be that the establishment now is that the Picts had crossbows. We don't really know it for a fact, but what we do know, the Romans had a weapon called an Arco Ballista that is very similar to this, and I will come to that in a minute. The Arco Ballista is a flexion bow. So we associate the Romans with weapons like ballista and catapulta, which were torsion artillery. So you had bundles of twisted rope with arms stuck between the bundles of twisted rope, and as you pull the arms back, the rope wants to untwist, and so you get a force that you can use to apply to the string, and therefore an arrow or a bolt. Now, they definitely had those. They're talked about. Vegetius talks about them. But what he doesn't do, he talks about how they're used. He doesn't talk about what they actually are. So there are some stone carvings as well by the Romans of a handheld crossbow type device that we have taken to be the Arco Ballista. We don't know because there's no association, no name associated with those carvings, but the establishment, or we believe that those are Arco Ballista. Now, the Romans, of course, were in Scotland at Hadrian's Wall and Antonine Wall, so the Romans were there, but they favoured composite bow technology, so horn and sinew. When you look at the Pictish culture, which comes after the Romans really, you can assume that certain skills were lost, and the ability to manufacture and look after composite bows in a climate like Scotland is really a challenge. And so I've made the assumption that if the Picts had a crossbow, it was not composite, it was a wooden limbed crossbow. So you make that assumption, that's the first starting point for me. The second is that the Arco Ballista is this very short stock with a sort of a turned handle on the end and a trigger that looks somewhat like this. Now, we know that that's what the Arco Ballista looks like. So if you come forward now to around about the year 1000 or afterwards, you'll find manuscript pictures of people using bows that look very similar to these. So I can make the assumption that there was fundamentally very little progress in crossbows between the late Roman Empire and, say, around about the year 1000. So I've made the assumption with the Pictish crossbow that it has followed the pattern that you can see in Western Europe, that there's been very little development from the fall of the Roman Empire to, say, about the year 1000 in crossbow manufacture, which means that it would look something like this. Now, of course, they were familiar with Roman weapons because the Roman weapons are up there in Scotland. So I've just taken it that they've basically copied the Roman form, but with a wooden bow on it. Now, again, the stone-carved reliefs of the Roman weapons, you can take any kind of interpretation really between about 1.1 and 1.3 meters for the width of the bow. I find that if you put a bow of 1.3 meters on something like this, it just begins to look really stupid. So I've kept this quite short at 1.1 meters, and the longest draw length that I feared that I could do with it. The nut is antler, and again, the only other piece of evidence really that the Picts had crossbows is there is an 8th or 9th century crossbow nut that's been found in Scotland. So we can assume it was there. Of course, we don't know how it got there. It could have been an imported weapon, who knows? But the point is, one was found in Scotland. So that is all the evidence that we have. Now, my interpretation means that I've got a wooden bow in it, I've got a linen string, I've got an antler nut. In the antler nut here, there is a metal sear to take the load of the trigger system. For very light bows, you don't need to do that. It wears the nut quickly, but if you're prepared to replace the nut, that doesn't really matter. But in this instance, I've put a metal sear in. We've got this weird handle at the back. And the trigger, there's again been discussion with the Arco Ballista that they could be shot one-handed. I find it amazingly awkward, but it is possible that you can hold it like this and you can point down and you can shoot. So it could be used as a cavalry weapon. One of the Roman scenes is shown as hunting. And again, with the Pictish bow, we don't know if it's war, we don't know if it's hunting, we don't know anything. On this one, to designate it as being a little bit more Pictish, the client asked that I put some carving on it. So we've got sort of a very typical Pictish mythical beast here. On the other side, we've got a boar. We've got a little bit of patterning here, which they did, and then Trescoil, I can't remember exactly what it's called, but a three-legged coil decoration on the back here. So that's it. The bow itself, we don't really, again, know how they were mounted, so I've just done this with wedges. Wedges works very well for sort of dismounting a bow for maintenance and things. So in a harsh climate like you're going to get in Scotland, that seems like quite a good way of doing it. So let's go shoot the thing. We're going to shoot this bow now. But before I do that, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the dimensions and sizes of it. So we've got an ash stock. We've got a Hawthorne bow itself. I went for a paw wood because I didn't really know about the availability of yew in Scotland at that time. I also quite fancy doing that. Linen string, all held together with wedges. Antler nut with a metal sear and a sprung trigger. Now the way you load it is that you pop it into your belly here and you span it back. So it's not enormously difficult, but I don't think I could do much more than 100 pounds. You either shoot it from the hip, again we don't know, but you shoot it from the hip, in which case you have limited accuracy, but with practice it's not horrendous. I guess you can do it also by sighting down it, so we'll try it both ways, and I'll just give you my judgment really on it. So spanning it, so we're in. So shooting from the hip, I'm going for the centre of the target. So I've gone just above, not so bad. Well, there you go, that probably tells you everything. So actually sighting it, you get a lift off crossbows very often. And actually I didn't account for it because I'm not used to shooting this sort of thing that way. So I'll do another one from the hip and see how we go. Ah, even worse. So there you are, make of that what you will. I think it's fair to say that crossbow design did improve over the ages. But anyway, here we are, my interpretation of a Pictish crossbow. Post-Roman culture in Scotland. It's an interesting weapon. It's good that they developed. Anyway, thank you very much for watching.